Hello friends, welcome to a new episode of Taste of Physics. Today I'm gonna be a bit egocentric. I'm going to talk about myself. In particular, of my last research paper just published in the journal Scientific Reports, which you can download on my website. It is very difficult to make predictions, especially about the future, once said Niels Bohr.
What did you just say?
I said I wish I could go back to the beginning of the season. Put some money on the Cubbies.
In nature, we find a multitude of complex physical systems. These systems are usually composed of many simple elements interconnected. These complex systems are characterized by being nonlinear systems. That is, an input twice the intensity does not get a response twice as intense. They are systems with presence of noise and with time delay. That is, the information that travels from one element to another doesn't so at a finite speed, and therefore the delay is relevant in its dynamics. An example of a complex system is your brain, made up of 100 billion neurons and more than 1 trillion connections. Neurons respond and communicate through small electrical stimuli, but they do so in a nonlinear way. When the electrical potential in a neuron reaches a threshold, it discharges an impulse, but the impulse will be always of the same magnitude, regardless of the electrical potential. In the brain, there is also electrical noise that affects the behavior of neurons. The fact that the electrical signal takes a while to go from one place, one neuron, in the brain to another, makes a neuron respond now to a signal that took place a little while ago elsewhere in the brain. These systems present emergent collective behavior that cannot be explained by analyzing their elements one by one. What do I mean by this? Well, by extrapolating the behavior of a neuron, we cannot understand consciousness, feelings, or how the brain as an entity processes the information. We usually say that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. We need a global, comprehensive study to uncover structures hidden in the behavior of the complex system. Some complex systems present their emergent behavior through sequences of events, such as the electrical discharges in neurons. But we can also find it in activity of earthquakes, in the beating of the heart, in social networks, financial markets, or in optical systems, among many others. Understanding and characterizing the different dynamical regimes that a given physical system can manifest is relevant to predict unwanted extreme events or to distinguish between different behaviors that are competing at the same time. Can we predict an earthquake of magnitude 8? How does our brain manage to distinguish a conversation at a party crammed with noise? Attempting to answer these questions, Rachel Collette, students from Carleton College, and I have analyzed the light of a semiconductor laser when it is subjected to feedback that is obtained through a mirror. This feedback induces a chaotic behavior in the laser, and the intensity shows drastic drops in a random way, but with a certain structure. One of the first new things that we have observed is that for very low currents and for very high currents, the depth of these dips is very diverse. There are deep peaks and there are superficial peaks. These situations of high and low currents correspond to transitions. For low currents, the behavior of peaks is starting to appear. For high currents, the system is on the verge to coherence collapse, another regime. For intermediate intensities, most of the peaks are similar depth, and we are in a stable regime here. That made me think that maybe we have two simultaneous behaviors competing. If this is so, we should somehow be able to separate, to distinguish them. To do this, we used the technique of the ordinal patterns of words. This consists in transforming the time series of dropouts in a series of words and study the probabilities of the words. It is like studying how the laser speaks in each situation. With a dictionary of 6 words, blue, black, green, pink, and red, we can see if all are equally probable. We would have a random behavior, or if there are preferred words, indicating a clearer structure in the language of the laser. Rachel calculated the probabilities of the words according to the depths of the peaks and found that for very low and very high currents, the laser speaks differently, depending on the depth of the peaks. For intermediate currents, there is no effect on the depth. That is, we have a behavior that triggers deep dropouts and another that triggers shallow dropouts. Once seen that in the transition regimes, the laser presents two types of behaviors at once, a question that came up was, can we predict when each type of dropout will occur? Or say another way, when the system is developing shallow peaks, can we predict the moment when the next peak will be a deep one? In order to respond to this, Marichal studied the words that take place just before a change from a shallow to a deep peak and vice versa. The answer was surprising. Yes, we can predict when the next peak will be different from the previous ones. It turns out that the laser has preferred words that he likes to say just before those changes. This only happens in the transition regimes, that is, when we have the two competing behaviors. For example, for high currents, when the laser is developing deep peaks, the word that it says is blue, then with 50% of probability the next peak will be shallow peak. When the laser is developing shallow peaks and the word that it says is red, then with 60% probability the next peak will be deep. Yes, it is true that we cannot make 100% predictions, but we must remember that we are talking about a complex system with many elements and that we have developed a very simple statistical prediction system, which describes the system behavior in a given temporal scale. These results can also be applied to other complex systems that present a sequence of events and a dual behavior with two competing dynamics. It also allows to distinguish the two dynamics and to predict the occurrence of each of them. This may be of a special interest in information processing using lasers and in the design of optical neurons, which is optical systems that mimic the behavior of neurons. Thank you for watching, and may the science be with you. If you liked the video, please subscribe and leave your messages below.